Sidney Crosby served up a treat for the Pittsburgh Penguins on Halloween night, Thursday night. The Montreal Canadiens are in town for a Saturday night showdown against the Penguins. My name is Scott McGregor, and this is Penguins Postgame. Let's get it on. You're locked in to Penguins hockey on the Sports for Beginners podcast. Sidney Crosby and the Penguins play here on the Sports for Beginners podcast. Hey, Showcase scores! The bingo game is ready to roll. Welcome to Penguins postgame. I'm PPG for PGH, and you'd have to be here to believe it. Here is your host, Scott McGregor. The Penguins served up a treat on Halloween night as Sidney Crosby scored goals 594 and 595. So let me just clear that up for you. 594, 595 of his career in an overtime interesting game where the Penguins would see Sid get the only 2 goals of the game, and the Penguins would end a 6-game losing streak. They defeated the Anaheim Ducks on Halloween night 2-1 in overtime in Pittsburgh. Hello everybody and welcome to Penguins postgame. Penguins and the Canadiens, recapping the Penguins 3-1 victory over the Montreal Canadiens on Pittsburgh night in Pittsburgh on Saturday, November 2nd, 2024. Happy November to all of our listeners right now. If you're tuning into this after checking out Bill's postgame or after checking out one of our previous shows already available on the YouTube channel and on our podcast feed, welcome in. We'll get you to Bill's postgame, Bills versus Dolphins, at the top of the hour. But here we go with Penguins and Canadiens. As we always do, we are going to start off, before we get into a little bit of a backstory, before we get into breaking down the game. As always, we're going to start things off with going between the pipes. And we're also going to go through our head coaches for this game. But to all of our French listeners, we want to say bonjour, bienvenue, welcome to this edition of Penguins postgame, our second of 3 editions of Penguins postgame between the Montreal Canadiens and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Both games so far, Pittsburgh has defeated Montreal. On October the 14th, they defeated Montreal 6-3. The same score they defeated Detroit a few nights ago, early in the first month of the season in Detroit, which was their second game of the 2024-2025 season. Fast forward to this past Saturday, where the Penguins once again come out victorious. This time they come out victorious on Pittsburgh night in PPG Paints Arena, the site of the game, and they beat Montreal 3-1. All right. With that said, our head coaches, as always, are Mike Sullivan, and for the Montreal Canadiens, head coach is none other than Martin St. Louis. And of course, for Pittsburgh, it's Mike Sullivan, in case anyone didn't know who I was talking about for Pittsburgh. It is Mike Sullivan for the Penguins as head coach against Martin St. Louis for the Montreal Canadiens. For the Montreal Canadiens, well, not really. It's not really anything new for Pittsburgh because Martin St. Louis went with the same combination he went with the last time the Penguins played the Canadiens in the Bell Center, when Martin St. Louis would send number 35, Sam Montembeault, to the net to be the starting goaltender. And of course, Caden P would be our backup for this game. However, the change that does happen is on the Pittsburgh side of the ice. And instead of Tristan Jarry being in the backup, or rather being the guy who will start in net, Joel Bloomquist would be the backup, just like last time. But the difference here is, even though Joel Bloomquist was the backup for this game, the difference here is that the Penguins would send to the the ice to go between the pipe against Sam Montembeault. They would send Alex Nedeljkovic. So it would be Alex Nedeljkovic versus Sam Montembeault. Caden P and Joel Bloomquist. And Joel Bloomquist on the backup for Pittsburgh and Montreal. All right. Quickly here before we jump into the game and break it all down. Not only did Pittsburgh have Sidney Crosby score twice in second straight game, as the Penguins defeated Montreal once again in the second straight game of this season series, which is a 3-game series in terms of the season. It'll wrap up in the month of December on the 12th of December. So the Penguins will not see the Montreal Canadiens in 2025. But this game was at PPG Paints Arena. Your referees for this game, we're going to get this out of the way very quickly before we take our first break. And your linesmen, Gene Herbert and Brandon Balladena were your referees. Brandon, if I pronounced your last name wrong, I apologize. Gene Herbert was also a referee in this game. Andrew Smith and Ben O'Quinn were your linesmen for this game. Out for Pittsburgh and Montreal. For Pittsburgh, they did not have Ryan Shea, and also no Jesse Puljujarvi. For Montreal, no Michael Pezzetta, and no Justin Barron. So no Justin Barron, no Michael Pezzetta, and no Ryan Shea, and no Jesse Puljujarvi for Pittsburgh. All right, let's take our first break of the program. When we return, we'll break it all down period by period. First period, second period, third period. And in between that, we will get into our game stats of the game. Just a few of them, because we will take a break and come back with our play of the game and the rest of the game stats, as well as the shake of the game, known as our player of the game segment. And we will give you a look at what happened on a busy Saturday night on November the 2nd, 2024, the day of this game. That will be coming up after a 30-second timeout, which will also set up the next 5 for Montreal and for Pittsburgh, including their next matchup, as the Penguins head out on the road for a little bit. And we'll talk about that all in a little bit. Let's go ahead and take our break, and we will be right back right after this to break down the Penguins' 3-1 win over the Montreal Canadiens. We'll be back in just a second.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
The Penguins beat the Montreal Canadiens 3-1 in Pittsburgh night on a Saturday night in Pittsburgh on Hockey Night in Canada. That is what we call it on CBC and Sportsnet. Of course, I'm not affiliated with Sportsnet, so just to let everyone know, especially those listening in Canada, if you were watching on CBC, Sportsnet, and wherever you could find the game, you could also listen to the game on WXDX FM Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh's rock and alternative, as well as 105.9 The X. Speaking of that, that is your home of the Pens and the best Pens coverage. All right, with that all said, let's go on into the game. Let's roll on into the game. Here we go. We're going to start with how the game went down penalty-wise and roll into the second, and roll into the scoring, I should say. So in this game, AX takes the only penalty in the first period, as the Montreal Canadiens get penalized for holding the stick at 8 minutes and 39 seconds in. Pittsburgh will go to the game's first power play of the night. They would score, but they don't score on the power play in the first period. They do score, however, and the goal was Sidney Crosby's fourth goal of the season, number 596 of his season. Sorry, not season, of his career. Crosby is now a few goals away from that 600 goals of his career milestone. Coming out of this game with the 2 goals he scored, which we'll get into in a little bit. He is now 3 goals away from scoring goal number 600 of his career. He now has 597, picking up 597 and 596 in this game. Both are his 4th and 5th goals of the season. All right, speaking of that, on the assist for Crosby's first goal was Rickard Rakell, his 3rd assist of the season. Time of the goal for the Penguins to go out in front 1-0 with the game's first lead. Well, it's 15 minutes and 57 seconds. On to the second period we go. And in the second period, penalties getting things started here in the second period. First up, the penalty will go this time to Pittsburgh. And Valtteri Pustinen will take a penalty here, 2 minutes for tripping. So Montreal will get their shot at the power play to open the second period. Time of the penalty for Valtteri Pustinen's tripping call is 5 minutes and 38 seconds. 5 minutes, 38 seconds. Chris Letang takes Pittsburgh's second penalty of the night, as the Penguins will go short-handed yet again. And this one is on Chris Letang. Letang is going to get called for 2 minutes for high sticking. That is the call on Letang. 2 minutes for high sticking against Joel Armia. And yes, so it was Joel Armia who was high-sticked in this penalty. And the Penguins' penalty came at 14 minutes and 19 seconds. Later in the period, the Montreal Canadiens' David Savard would score his first penalty of the game, and the only other penalty of the game that he would take, the only penalty he would take in the game, I should say, 2 minutes for delay of game. That came at 16 minutes and 46 seconds in. Penguins do score on the power play, and it was on that penalty by David Savard where Sidney Crosby not only scored his 5th goal of the season, but he scored a PPG for PGH, as it was a power play goal for the Penguins to go up 2-0. That was his second goal of the night. Penguins looking at a dangerous I should say Canadiens, looking at a dangerous Sidney Crosby. He's on. He is on. Yes, I should say he is on hat trick watch. Unfortunately, though, Sidney Crosby does not get a hat trick in this game, but he was on hat trick watch, so he was a dangerous player on the ice. On the assist for this Crosby goal, Christopher Letang, his third of the season, and Erik Karlsson, his seventh assist of the season. Time of the goal, 18 minutes, 40 seconds. After 20, the Penguins were up 1-0. After 40, Penguins now up 2-0 on Montreal. To the third we go, and this is where the game got ugly. This is where the game got ugly. Well, that depends on who you ask. First of all, we're going to start in the third period with the scoring because the penalties didn't come until literally no time left. Yeah, I'm telling you, literally no time left. These penalties, well, I guess you could say these penalties here, they don't mean much considering they took place at 20 minutes into the third period. That's right. All of these penalties were at 20 minutes in the third period. There was no time on the clock. Absolutely no time on the clock. So let's get into our scoring first before we jump into those penalties. So, first up, Christian Dvorak gets the Canadiens on the board with his first goal of the season, first of the year for him. Emil Heineman. Yes, Emil Heineman. Hopefully I have that right. Picks up his first assist of the season. Speaking of first of the season. And Jay Slakowski JS, I'll say. I thought I had your name right there, Mr. Slakowski. If I pronounce it wrong, I apologize, but that's the 7th assist of the season for JS. Time of the goal, 5 minutes, 32 seconds. Uh-oh. Here comes Montreal. Penguins now lead by just a goal. And Martin St. Louis pulls the goaltender in Sam Montembeault. And guess what? The Penguins execute. Welcome to the neighborhood, Blake Lizzito. Welcome to the neighborhood, Blake Lizzito. His first goal as a Penguin and first goal of the season is an empty net goal to give Pittsburgh a 3-1 lead. And who would you expect to be on the assist but Lars Eller? Lars Eller picking up his third assist of the season on the Blake Lizzito goal. Welcome to the neighborhood, Blake, in Pittsburgh. His first as a Penguin and first of the season comes at 19 minutes and 15 seconds. And now for the fun part. Well, this is where things got ugly. But you know what? I guess you could say when the penalties occur at 20 minutes into the third period, there's really no time to call a penalty, right? Well, here we go. Both teams took a couple of penalties 20 minutes into the third. Here we go. First up for the Penguins, penalties would go over to Ryan Graves. 5 minutes for fighting. And Noel Achari picking up a penalty for 2 minutes for roughing. Montreal had 3 penalties, 2 to 1 guy. That was AX. First was 2 minutes for cross-checking. Second, 2 minutes for roughing. And then Jaden Struble. He has 5 minutes for fighting, same as Ryan Graves. All these penalties at 20 minutes into the third period. So, wow. A 5-minute major for fighting to Ryan Graves, a 5-minute major for fighting to Jaden Struble, a 2-minute minor, I should say, for roughing and cross-checking for AX for Montreal, and a 2-minute for roughing call against Noel Achari. What a third period of penalties that was. And they all didn't really matter. All right. That's our breakdown of the game. Let's break down just the shots on goal. And we'll come back with the remaining game stats with our play of the game and much more still to come here on Penguins Postgame. Due to time constraints, we're not going to get to our abbreviation of the save of the game, but we are going to do our main feature, one of our main features, the shake of the game, which is our player of the game segment. And that is coming up in a little bit later, following this next break. Just to get to that break before we do, here is your shots on goal via period to make up our final shots on goal tally. All even at 5 shots on goal apiece for Montreal and for Pittsburgh, 5 shots each. So we were tied after 20 minutes at 5 shots apiece. Montreal finished the second period with 10 shots on goal in the second period. Pittsburgh finished with 16 shots on goal. So Pittsburgh was ahead by 6 shots. And then Pittsburgh kind of fell asleep, I guess. I don't know if you want to call it that, but they kind of fell asleep. Finishing the third period with 3 shots on goal, including the Blake Lizido goal, empty net goal for his first goal of the season and first goal as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So they finished with a total of 24 shots on goal. Montreal finishes the third period with 11 shots on goal to finish off their tally total of 26 shots on goal. So fairly even, very fairly even. Once again, your final tally of shots on goal, 26 for the Canadiens and 24 for the Penguins. The Penguins were not outshot by the Montreal Canadiens 26-24, but they were, I guess, keeping it very even with Montreal in this game. The remaining game stats, the shake of the game, 3 stars, the play of the game, next on Penguins postgame when we continue in just a moment. Here on Sports for Beginners and On the Ice and Behind the Benches, streaming every Wednesday off day on the Ice and Behind the Benches when the Penguins are on an off day. This season. Back with more in a moment. Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down. Nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Welcome back to Penguins postgame here. Our Pittsburgh night recap, Penguins and the Canadiens. Before we get down to wrapping things up here with the game stats, just want to let you guys know that the Penguins have now played in 13 NHL games this season, meaning out of 82, we now only have, let's see, how many do we got left? They have played 13 out of 82. We're down to 69 games left in the season. So 13 games in the books for Pittsburgh. And the Penguins now have a record of 5-7-1. They now sit sixth in the Metropolitan Division. So this was a big, these two wins against Montreal and Anaheim at home were big wins as the Penguins hit the road to play the New York Islanders on Tuesday night. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Montreal Canadiens, meanwhile, are where the Buffalo Sabres are right now at 4-7-1. But they are at the bottom of the Atlantic Division right now as we sit here. So we'll see what happens over the course of the season. Here. Only 2 games to speak of today, but we are focused on Penguins and Montreal, which have come and gone. And Sidney Crosby Sidney Crosby is getting close. He's getting closer to 600 goals of his career. In case you haven't seen it yet, the Pittsburgh Penguins will be honoring Evgeny Malkin on 500 goals in his NHL career when the Penguins battled the Detroit Red Wings 2 nights after Remembrance Day, which is when the Penguins will be battling the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars will be in town on Monday, Remembrance Day. That's next Monday. So be sure you check out that. And because it's Remembrance Day, we are going to hold off our shows until after the 11th hour to honor the veterans during Remembrance Day. And this also means you will catch our Penguins post-game show, Penguins and Stars, on Tuesday instead of on Monday, right after the game. With that all being said, we'll talk about that all in a little bit later. It is time now for our 3 stars of the game before we reiterate the game stat. And if you listen to the show on the radio network I mentioned off the top, WXDX FM Pittsburgh, an iHeart radio station, also known as Pittsburgh's Rock and Alternative, 1059 DX. Well, those 3 stars are brought to you by your neighborhood Ford stores in Pittsburgh. Ford cars, trucks, and SUVs are the official vehicles of the Pittsburgh Penguins. We are not sponsored by that, and of course the play of the game, by the way, would be brought to you by Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh's entertainment destination. We are not sponsored by Rivers Casino, nor are we sponsored by Ford, your neighborhood Ford stores in Pittsburgh. So with all that being said, here we go with your 3rd star of the game, and that is number 58 of the Pittsburgh Penguins, defenseman Chris Letang. 1 apple in this game, no goals to speak of, 1 point. So 1 assist in this game, no goals to speak of, add 1 point. Your 2nd star in this game, goaltender of the Penguins for this game, number 39, Alex Nedeljkovic. A goals against average of 1 and a save percentage of .962. And your 1st star tonight, your 1st star of this game, is the Penguins captain and center, number 87, Sidney Crosby. It's Sidney Crosby with 2 goals, 2 points, no assists in this game. Sidney Crosby, Alex Nedeljkovic, and Chris Letang. Let me reiterate that again. Sidney Crosby, Alex Nedeljkovic, and Chris Letang are the 3 stars of this game. That's Sidney Crosby, Alex Nedeljkovic, and Chris Letang. All right. Back on over to our game stats, which we talked about the shots on goal, which are 26 to 24. We talked about that before the break. And here are the remainder of those game stats. In a game that saw 49 faceoffs, the Pittsburgh Penguins won 57.1% of those faceoffs, winning 28 of 49. Montreal, meanwhile, not too shabby. They won 21 of 49 of the faceoffs for a faceoff percentage of 42.9%. The Penguins' power play, perfect 2 for 2. Sorry, the penalty kill was 2 for 2. Montreal's penalty kill, 1 for 2 on the night. Their power play, 0 for 2. And just like Montreal's penalty kill, the Pittsburgh power play on Saturday night, 50% good, scoring on one of their 2 opportunities on the power play. They are 1 for 2 at the end of the game. The Penguins spent 11 minutes in the penalty box on Saturday. The Montreal Canadiens spent 13 minutes in the penalty box. In the penalty box. In this one. Montreal out-hit Pittsburgh 28 to 19. They also out-blocked Pittsburgh by blocking 24 of Pittsburgh's 24 shots on goal. Pittsburgh blocked 19 of Montreal's 26 shots on goal. Montreal, just like Anaheim the other night, they had trouble with the puck. Keeping it on their stick. They gave the puck away 20 times. Pittsburgh only gave the puck away to Montreal 15 times. So not much better for Pittsburgh, but they didn't give it away 20 times. Oh, and remember how I said it was the same kind of thing with Anaheim? I gotta reiterate the stats there off the air. I gotta find out just to make sure how many giveaways Anaheim had. I know I recorded that on our latest episode of Penguins postgame, but I gotta reiterate just to make sure I know how many times they gave the puck away. Anaheim gave the puck away to Pittsburgh. We'll see. Anyways, finally the takeaways. Pittsburgh with 5, Montreal with 4. Fairly even there. But the Penguins pick up a 3-1 victory despite the shots not being in their favor. As they weren't outshot, but Montreal beat them in the shot total 26 to 24. They weren't outshot. With that all being said, though, that'll wrap up our game stats. We are about 40 minutes in, so just a couple minutes left in our program. So it's time now for the play of the game. And my play of the game, it's going to go to the Montreal goal scorer, Christian Dvorak, who got Montreal on the board and made it feel like it was going to come down to the wire if Montreal was able to score and make it 2-2 to force overtime. Obviously, it didn't happen because our final score, as it stands, Pittsburgh 3, Montreal 1. And now Montreal is looking forward. I'm pretty sure come December, they're looking forward to not getting swept in this season series between Pittsburgh and Montreal when that wraps up next month in December. So looking forward to seeing what will happen there when they meet one more time in the Bell Center on December the 12th, 2024. But before we get to that, let's get down to breaking this all down and finishing it up here. So, as I said, my play of the game is going to go to Christian Dvorak. The play of the game is going to go to Christian Dvorak. It's time for the shake of the game, but what we're going to do here is we're actually going to go ahead and take a break. So when we come back, we'll get to the shake of the game. And we are going to get to what's next for Montreal, what's next for Pittsburgh, and of course, we will wrap up on the other side. So we are going to take a break. When we return, the shake of the game will go on in. Plus, we will wrap things up with our what's next for Montreal and what's next for Pittsburgh. And I'm even going to let you guys know what went down on a very busy Saturday night in the NHL on Saturday, November 2nd, 2024. All right. That and the shake of the game coming up next in 30 seconds on Penguins postgame. We'll be right back.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
The Penguins defeat the Montreal Canadiens for the second time in the 2024-2025 in the 2024-2025 regular season. They are one win away from completing a season series sweep against the Montreal Canadiens. And they'll be looking for that when they meet once again in the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec on December the 12th, 2024. That's 2024. Just to make sure, because we'll still be in 2024 by that time. Before we get down to the shake of the game, I promised you we'll give you a look at what happened on Saturday night, so here we go. In a busy day on a Saturday night, let's start out in the global series. So the Florida Panthers beat the Dallas Stars 4-2 in the global series down in Finland. The Chicago Blackhawks go to a shootout against the Los Angeles Kings and beat the Kings 4-3. The Ottawa Senators and the Boston Bruins picking up W's. They pick up W's both in Philadelphia and in Ottawa. Ottawa picking up a 3-0 victory over the Seattle Kraken. Boston picks up a 3-0 victory in Philadelphia over the Philadelphia Flyers. The Toronto Maple Leafs fall to the St. Louis Blues. The Toronto Maple Leafs fall to the St. Louis Blues 4-2. The Maple Leafs fall in their second and final game of their 2-game set with the St. Louis Blues, as the Blues defeat the Maple Leafs 4-2 on Saturday. The Washington Capitals beat the Columbus Blue Jackets 7-2. The Detroit Red Wings pick up a 2-1 victory over the Buffalo Sabres. Nashville Predators picking up a 5-2 victory in Nashville against the Avalanche. The Vegas Golden Knights go into overtime with the Utah Hockey Club and beat the Utah Hockey Club 4-3 in overtime. Down in the Shark Tank, the Vancouver Canucks beat the San Jose Sharks 3-2. So the Vancouver Canucks defeat the San Jose Sharks 3-2. And yeah, that's it. That's your scores for Saturday. Not too busy of a Sunday, but we are only focused on Saturday. All right, with that being said, let's move things right along here on this recap to the closing moments of the show. All right, here we go. So, it's time now for your shake of the game, and we are doing these without an introduction for the remainder of the season, just to see how it all goes down. So with that all being said, let's get right to it, shall we? And of course, our Shake of the Game segment is inspired by the ad rather, by Jake Gensel and the Milkshake Factory, which is the official milkshake of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Every time Jake Gensel scored as a Pittsburgh Penguin, Penguin fans get half off Jake Shakes at the Milkshake Factory the next day. And of course, now that Jake Gensel is no longer a Pittsburgh Penguin, the Milkshake Factory wants to continue that trend, and they find Brian Rust. Brian Rust has been hurt, so he has not been able to contribute to the team. But now every time Brian Rust scores in the game, Penguin fans will get half off Rusty Shake the next day at the Milkshake Factory. And again, the Milkshake Factory is the official milkshake of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And when I say the Milkshake Factory, I'm talking about the Milkshake Factory in Pittsburgh locations. So anytime Brian Rust, when he is back with the team and playing in games, anytime he scores this season, Penguins fans will receive half off Rusty Shakes the next day at the Milkshake Factory at your local Pittsburgh Milkshake Factory dealers. All right. With that all said and done, let's not waste any more time and get into it. Due to time constraints, we're going to do one per team. So the first one's going to go to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And this one is going to go to Penguins goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic. It's going to go to Penguins goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic. It's going to go to Alex Nedeljkovic. His stats speak for themselves. Gave up a goal at even strength, which was the only goal he gave up. Made 25 saves on 26 shots. Ends the game with a save percentage of .962, playing the whole 60 minutes of the game. I thought Alex played really well. So a really nice game by Alex Nedeljkovic for this game. I really like how Nedeljkovic played in this game. And that's why he's got my Shake of the Game, Player of the Game segment. Or rather, recipient. If you have any other people who you think deserve to be a recipient of the Shake of the Game, send us an email at sportsforbeganners8231@gmail.com, or go on to our Discord server at Penguins Postgame Show Interactions and give us your play of the game, your shake of the game, your game pucks of the game, and much more. Even your 3 stars of the game if you're displeased with how the 3 stars struck up. All right. Moving on to Montreal. And this one is going to be a pick-me-up. And this one is going to go to Joel Armia. It's going to go to Joel Armia. Not a lot done by Joel Armia, but he did get 1 shot on goal, registered a block, a hit. I think one of the main reasons this drew me to him was because of his 3 giveaways in the game. Now, I know I'm a Pittsburgh Canadian hockey fan, so I really shouldn't be feeling, too bad for the guy. But I am. So, I'm going to give him a pick-me-up here. Shake of the game. So, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's going to go to the goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic. And it's also going to go to, for Montreal, it's going to go to Joel Armia. Joel Armia, Alex Nedeljkovic, your shake of the game players who were getting the recipient of the game for the shake of the game. All right, with that said, that'll bring us to the closing moments of this program, which means it's time for the next 5 games for Pittsburgh and for Montreal. We won't see Montreal and Pittsburgh back in action until December 12th, 2024. So let's start with Montreal. Who does Montreal play next? Well, their next 5 includes a couple of road games after 1 quick home game tomorrow night in Montreal when they will play host of the Calgary Flames, who are 6-5-1 coming into this game. They will then go head-to-head with the New Jersey Devils on Thursday night, November 7th, 2024. Then they are in Toronto on Saturday night for an all-Canadian matchup between the Canadiens and the Maple Leafs. So the Maple Leafs will battle the Montreal Canadiens Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada on November the 9th. That is this upcoming we are in November. This upcoming Saturday, just double check here on my calendar here to make sure, because today is November the 4th. Yes, that is this Saturday indeed. So yes, this Saturday, Montreal and Toronto go head-to-head. Just to double check there. And on the Monday of Remembrance Day, Montreal will take on the Buffalo Sabres in Buffalo on TSN2. That is for those listening in Canada and specifically listening in Montreal. You can catch a couple of these games, 3 of them actually, on TSN2 in the Montreal area. And if you are in Canada and you're able to catch the game, again, that's TSN2 for Canadians on TSN. They'll be back in action against the Minnesota Wild in Minnesota on the following Thursday, the 14th. Game on TSN2. In Minnesota, game time at 8 p.m. Eastern. So the next 5 for Montreal. Home to the Flames tomorrow night on Tuesday night, November the 5th, 2024. At the New Jersey Devils on Thursday, November 7th, 2024. At Toronto this Saturday night for Hockey Night in Canada on November 9th. At Buffalo on Remembrance Day, November 11th, next Monday. And at Minnesota on Thursday night, next Thursday. For the Pittsburgh Penguins. Speaking of road games, a few road games for them before they come home for 2 games, all part of their next 5 games. They'll play the New York Islanders tomorrow night on Tuesday night. Game time 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, 4:30 Pacific Time, 12:30 a.m. in the UK, 1:30 a.m. in France. We will have the program for you probably on Wednesday, but if I bring the show to you on Tuesday night right after the game, you'll probably get it on the feed at a time on Wednesday on Sports for Beginners. All the Penguin post-game shows on the ice and behind the benches are part of Penguins Wednesday Hockey, only Wednesdays when the Penguins have an off day and are not playing on that day. That is when you can catch recaps like this one, only on the ice and behind the benches. Otherwise, you'll catch them all on Sports for Beginners. With that all being said, rolling right along from the New York Islanders, which is Tuesday night. They'll be in Raleigh, North Carolina to take on the Carolina Hurricanes, who are 8-2 and 0 heading into this matchup. Of course, that is as we sit here. Who knows what they'll be by the time we are done with the New York Islanders? We'll find that out shortly, I'm sure. But that is as we sit here recording this. Then the Penguins will make the quick turnaround and head on over to the nation's capital of the United States in Washington for a showdown with the Washington Capitals. And the Pittsburgh Penguins. So the Capitals, right after the Hurricanes, that's on Thursday night. The Hurricanes are on Thursday night. The Capitals on Friday night. Then on November the 11th, the Penguins are back home in Pittsburgh for Veterans Day or Remembrance Day, whatever you want to call it, in Pittsburgh. They are back in Pittsburgh for a showdown with the Stars on Veterans Day / Remembrance Day on Monday, November the 11th, 2024. And then they will be hosting the Detroit Red Wings, who are looking, and I mean looking, just like Montreal on Saturday was looking. They are looking to avoid going down 2-0 in the season series. We'll find out what happens in that season series a few nights from tonight. And by that time, I mean if you're catching this on Tuesday, a few nights from the Islanders night, which is Tuesday night, the next game. So if you're catching this on a Tuesday, a few nights from tonight, we will find out what happens in round 2 of the 2024-2025 NHL season series between the Detroit Red Wings and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The next 5 for the Penguins go as follows. At the Islanders, Tuesday night on the island. In Raleigh, North Carolina on Thursday against the Hurricanes. Then at Washington, Friday night on November 8th, 2024. Then they will host the Dallas Stars on Monday, November the 11th, 2024. And lastly, they will host the Detroit Red Wings on Wednesday, November 13th, 2024 in Pittsburgh before they head back out on the road to Columbus, Ohio. But we're going 5 games at a time when we're looking ahead. We're not going to be looking too far ahead. And speaking of not looking too far ahead, up next for the Penguins, it's a showdown on the island. The first one of the season between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders. Head coaches, before we leave you, as we preview that game, are Mike Sullivan and Patrick Roy. The game will be at UBS Arena, and we'll talk about that all on the next episode of Penguins Postgame. That'll pretty much wrap it up here. So as we wrap it up, the attendance record at PPG Paints Arena, the site of Penguins and Canadiens on Pittsburgh night in Pittsburgh, on Saturday, November 2nd, 2024, where the Penguins beat the Canadiens 3-1, and Sidney Crosby scored goals number 596 and 597 of his NHL career. It came in front of 17,362 fans in attendance. That's 17,362 fans in attendance at PPG Paints Arena. All right, everybody. I will catch you on the flip side. Bills postgame. Bills versus Dolphins from Sunday, November 3rd, 2024 is coming up next. I will catch you on the flip side after the Pens and the Islanders. And as we always say on Penguins postgame, we say it loud and proud, let's go Pens! Thank you so much for joining us here today on the podcast. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Let's go Pens! And I'll catch you on the next edition of Penguins Postgame. My name is Scott McGregor, and this has been Penguins Postgame. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has just left the building. You've just listened to Pittsburgh Penguins hockey on the Sports for Beginners podcast. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners or visit the official Sports for Beginners podcast website. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned. And remember that it is not goodbye, it is until next time. And you'd have to be here to believe it. Thank you so much for checking in to Penguins postgame this season, Penguins fans. Your host of the Sports for Beginners podcast, Scott McGregor, here. I just wanted to let you guys know that it brings me great joy to bring you a show like the one we brought you last year. And it brings me even more joy with everything that has come out of it as well, as we try to navigate through quite a year with milestone after milestone in the month of October and the month of September. As mentioned, again, my name is Scott McGregor, but if you have any questions, any concerns, any content you want aired on the program, please send me an email at Sports for Beginners podcast 8231 at gmail.com. Once again, that's Sports for Beginners podcast 8231 at gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast and for listening to this episode of Penguins Postgame. We will see you next time right here on Sports for Beginners. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.